Imagine that for some crazy reason you are only allowed to do 10 different exercises for the rest of your life. Imagine that you want to be a globally competent all-rounder and good in all things. Today I'm going to walk you through the 10 exercises that I would choose if I was only allowed to do only these forever. I am going to caveat this for all the recreational bodybuilders out there. This might not necessarily be for functional hypertrophy. I'm looking at this through the lens more of good quality strength, central nervous system development, being a good quality all-round athlete, powerful, fast, explosive, strong, still big and muscular. Not necessarily through the lens of just getting size or being sculpted. You're going to start to see a couple of themes emerge with these exercises. So let's see if you can pick those up. So jumping straight into number one, standing push press. I'm not going to do this strict. I did say push press deliberately. I'm not going to pick strict press. A couple of reasons for that. I mean, strict press in theory would give you better starter strength, pushing from the shoulder position effectively. But one of the reasons I'm doing push press is you're going to get more of a general central nervous system recruitment. You're going to get a little bit of a better movement pattern grooved because effectively you're generating force from the ground by the fact that you get to use your legs and your hips. And you are still getting an unbelievable muscular benefit by the fact that you can properly flip and drive up. You can lift more weight with a push press than you can with a strict press. And you can probably actually build more muscle with a push press anyway, because you can actually control the eccentric and you are going to get more supramaximal loading. Therefore, if you're having to use your legs and your hips because you can't lift that amount of weight strict, lowering under control and controlling that eccentric means that you're probably more able to get heavier eccentrics than you would be if it was with a weight that you could actually lift strict. The reason that I use a barbell instead of dumbbells is I just think overall it's probably more of a realistic movement. I think that with most overhead stuff, the chances are you would use both arms. And the fact that realistically, unless you're unbelievably flipping stable and balanced, you are going to be pushing a hell of a lot more absolute weight with a barbell than you are with two dumbbells in your hands. So you can focus on the eccentric tempo like that, or you can do it more dynamically. Full range, globally recruiting vertical push movement, standing push press is my first exercise of the day. These are in no particular order, by the way. These are just kind of brain dumped down. So that's not necessarily number one. It's just in the mix. Number two, heading south on the body now, Zer Squat. So some people are going to hate me with this. I've made my feelings about back squats perfectly clear, but also I'm aware that the problems I have with back squats, not everybody has, but then at the end of the day, this is my video, so leave me alone. So I'd say Zer Squat. I like the movement pattern. I think it keeps your torso in a little bit of a better position rather than having the barbell on your back. Obviously, you can't lift as much weight in regards to the absolute kind of neural recruitment. You're not going to be Zer squatting the same amount as you would be back squatting. It's very unlikely anyway. I just think it's a flipping ace movement. I think you really get to kind of lock your torso and your trunk in position. I think that it's a movement that more people have the mobility for than to do a barbell back squat, which I genuinely believe, arse to grass, not that many people do actually have the ability to do. Torso and trunk stability are needed, and I think they are developed massively in that movement. As far as a squat pattern or a squat variation goes, I was always going to have a squat pattern in the 10 movements, right? You kind of do have to. It would be ridiculous to pick something like a flipping, laterally inverted toe, left leg flipping calf raise and not have a squat pattern in there. I was debating whether or not I go for front squats. I was debating whether or not I go for safety bar, perhaps something with a box. But for a few of the reasons, again, just kind of your natural body position, I don't know, man. There's just something about it. Zer squats, obviously, again, you'll be able to lift more with the other movements, but I think overall with Zer squats, the body position, the fact that your back's loaded, but your trunk is nice and stable, there's something about having the point of resistance in front and a little bit lower that I just love. I think it makes your whole torso insanely strong, along with building the power in your legs. So that's why I chose it. The next one is split grip pull-ups. I like this because I think that any kind of vertical pull is unlikely to be done in a completely even bilateral symmetrical way. Even if you're pulling on a rope or something, one hand's going to be slightly in front of the other. The position of your wrist is going to be a little bit different. And I just like split grip because it turns everything and you build the stability, being able to pull in a slightly rotated position. And obviously we do the other side as well. That's anything with split grip. It kind of counts as one movement, even if you have to turn, right? It's not like that deadlift and that deadlift are two different movements, right? So split grip pull-ups in general, I just think that developing the ability to pull with a slightly rotated torso and holding stability with a little bit of an offset position in your torso, I think is absolutely flipping ace. And again, whether or not you're pulling yourself up onto something, you're pulling a rope, you're pulling something towards you. That particular vertical pull pattern of having one hand one way, one hand the other, I just like it. And it's fun, man. I just find, I don't know, maybe it's my time in the military, but just doing overhand pull-ups, like, I don't mind them, and luckily my pull strength is always pretty decent actually. Like, I mean, on any given day I would very much expect to be able to do 20 straight pull-ups, like, on any given day. So I'm not bad at them. I do find them very boring, and I think you just do so many of them when you're in the Marines, right, that you just kind of get a bit bored. So even a simple alteration of flipping changing one of the hand positions is enough for me to kind of keep it fresh. So for me personally, I enjoy them more, and I also think that realistically it probably has a more positive transfer to other pull movement patterns that you're going to be partaking in other sports, in life generally, to stay strong. And again, the transfer of these movements and the strength and athleticism and power that you get from them, that's the lens that I'm looking at this whole thought experiment through. So split grip pull-ups are also in the top 10. Number 4, back to the lower body, step up to knee drive. So they've done a couple of studies where they measure like glute activation on dozens of different lower body exercises: squat, front squat, Zerches, I assume, deadlifts, RDLs, glute bridge, lunges. Of all of them, the most amount of glute activation that you get, the top like 5 exercises or something like that, were like 5 different variations of step up. So there are a couple of different reasons for this. I think that starting, so instead of having the glute under control and then going down under an eccentric, the fact of the matter is, most of the time when we step up on something, we're not stepping down from the same surface to then go back up to. We are climbing up, right? So that front leg that is up on a box or a bench or whatever, the chances are that that leg is going to be switched off, and then there's a bit of a forward lean, and then we drive up from there. It is an incredibly relevant movement. It is incredibly realistic for a hell of a lot of other shit that we are going to be doing, right? And in terms of single leg exercises, these are obviously my favorite in lower body training anyway. I think that there's more of a crossover because in most sports I've ever been in, I've spent 100% of my time on one foot, not on two. The reason the exercises step up to knee drive is I don't think that you're limiting the amount of weight that you can use that much just by having a quick knee drive and a quick kind of hip flexion pull at the end, obviously with the other leg, after a step up. So having like one leg driving down, and once it becomes nearly extended, the other leg flexes, I think that that's a very good movement pattern to just drill generally. And I think even if you're going really heavy, like if you're doing like a 6 rep max on a step up, so like 3 each side, even if it's your maximum step up, I don't really think you're diminishing that much. You can probably just get a quick knee drive in and then bring the foot back down to stabilize. But I think it's a very good movement pattern to develop generally. Usually when we put one leg in front of the other leg comes forward again pretty soon after. That's how we move forwards as humans. The next one is farmer's walk. So I am going to consider this a movement. I think that the amount of core stability, again, trunk stability, like, you know, counter flexion, counter rotation, counter lateral flexion primarily. With farmer's walks, I think the amount of stability that you get around the hips and the pelvis and kind of the mid back, upper back, everything, like, it is a global movement, right? Other than your push levers, you're working pretty much flipping everything. And again, in terms of being able to carry something heavier than yourself from A to B, realistically with our hands is one of the main ways that we'd be doing that. And I just think that you do get strong. I think that you get athletic. I think that you build stability in your lower body as well. Probably it'll build stability in your ankles. It'll build stability in your knees, because if they weren't stable, you'd roll them, right? And in all honesty, this was actually one of the first exercises I came up with for exactly those reasons. Works your grip, works your shoulders and your traps, works your mid back to stabilize, your lower back to stabilize, everything around your hips and your pelvis, works your legs, obviously. It's one of the most transferable, objectively functional full body movements that you can do, which is why farmer's walk is on the list. The next one is band resisted bench press. So we've done a vertical push already. Now we're going into a horizontal push. So some kind of horizontal push movement variation was probably always going to be in there. I like having the band resisted nature of this, because I think with a lot of horizontal pushing, whether or not you're throwing a punch, whether or not you're throwing a rock, whether or not you're flipping doing something, I think that the idea of having a level of like natural strength curve work in there is very beneficial. So the purpose of the band, same purpose as when you train with chains or whatever, it becomes tighter and tighter and tighter, or there's, you know, more and more and more of the chain you're lifting towards the top of the movement where you are naturally stronger. So we are naturally stronger towards the last part of a movement anyway, towards the extension point, but effectively we might be benching 80 kilos at the bottom but 110 at the top. So because of that, because it's getting tighter, is the purpose of the band, which means that effectively we're lifting more as we go through the movement, it cues your brain, basically it tells your brain to not only just go through the movement, but to continue to accelerate all the way to and through the extension point. So for maximal strength, it's fantastic, which is why Louis Simmons, Westside Barbell, use banded stuff a lot with his powerlifters, but it's also amazing for like power development. And that is why banded bench press, band resisted, not assisted, band resisted bench press is on the list. Not saying that it would be there because I want to throw a punch. It's 2024, it's a dangerous world out there. You can never be too careful. The next one is a sled push. So we are back to lower body, also unilateral again, kind of single leg again. But depending on whether or not you do it, whether or not you're kind of like, your shoulders are kind of like a little bit closer to the bar, or whether or not it's stretched out in front of you, it's working your push levers a little bit, still working your grip, and it's a lot of like trunk and torso stability, otherwise you wouldn't push in a straight line. And you see this with CrossFitters sometimes when they're pushing a sled when they're really tired, they just kind of like fall to the side, which happens when you're fatigued. And obviously training in a way where you're pushing a sled means that you develop the ability to not do that. Great for your calf, great for your Achilles, because your heel is not on the ground, so as long as you're striking the ground properly, again, so we want to overcome the inertia of the sled and then keep that moving, so there's a little bit of like acceleration work in there as well. You can do it heavy and slow. You can do acceleration pushes where you're really just looking to get up to top speed as quick as you can. You can do some overspeed work and like high top end work where you're going over the kind of the cyclical nature of running but held down in that drive position. But as a gym based exercise, pushing a sled, to be honest, obviously this is top 10, right? If I had top 5, this would probably be in there as well. Next one is deadlift. Finally, I hear you all cry that I'm talking about something that is actually moderately conventional. And conventional deadlift, in terms of not sumo deadlift, is the exercise that I was going for. So being able to pick something up off the floor as heavy as possible. Other obviously exercises that we covered today, they might be a little bit more nuanced, they might be a little bit more quote unquote odd if you think that's the case, and that might prevent the amount of total weight that you're lifting. Again, Zer Squat as an example compared to back squat, or step up to knee drive as opposed to just a normal step up where you might not do that. You might be able to lift a little bit more or whatever. Deadlift, just maximum deadlift. So we do get the absolute maximal neural activation that we can. Again, hugely axially fatiguing as standing push presses, but again, I'm looking at this through the lens of not necessarily just how to put on sculpted muscle, but the most generally functional movements, athletic movements, so that you can continue to pursue yourself as a competent all-round athlete, military operator, master generalist, whatever, right? These things are going to work for all of you, and having a maximal ability to pick something up that's heavy. Realistically, as we know, deadlift is probably the heaviest exercise that you can go through. By that, I mean you can lift more weight on that than you can do on pretty much anything else. And it is very functional, right? I mean, being able to drop down in a position where it's like half hinge, half knee bend, and then drive and keep your torso straight as you lift something heavy off the floor against gravity. That is one of the most functional things you can do. And the transfer from that to picking up a heavy rock or picking up a person or whatever, obviously it's not direct, but realistically, the more generalized body strength you develop through doing deadlifts and lifting heavy barbells off the floor, there is going to be a huge transfer. On to the last couple now, single arm row. So we've done a vertical push and a horizontal push. We've done a vertical pull, so now time for the horizontal pull. So again, I'm breaking these down by movement patterns. That's how I first kind of did this, and then getting a little bit more specific and kind of getting in the nuts and bolts of different particular ways of delivering that movement pattern. So single arm row, this could be probably kind of bent over, or like even 3-point row actually. So both knees slightly bent forward in a hinge position, one arm balanced on something and then pulling the other arm up, so that we're developing the big strong pull levers, but there's a little bit of kind of like rotation there as well, and the other arm is there to stabilize. So again, you can do this on a bench. If you're lifting heavy dumbbells, if you've ever done this, just a one-armed like 3-point row against a dumbbell rack, or you just hand on one of the other dumbbells or something, that stuff's fine. But again, horizontal pull wise, I think developing that in a unilateral way that isn't just completely bilateral and neutral, I think is good. I think that the chances are if we are pulling something, it won't necessarily be with just both hands. It will probably be trying to pull to one side of the body as well. So I think having that slight kind of rotational strength is very functional and very transferable. And as with any of the movements, there are different ways that you can do them. You can either do it nice and dynamically, you can like pull up strict, you can do an isometric hold at the top. That's one of the things that you could do on this actually, and then controlled eccentric tempo to follow. Lots of different benefits depending on the way that you execute the rep. But being in a slight hinge position, obviously you're stabilizing your torso and your trunk. It's a whole body movement when you're bent over and you're not chest supported. The other arm is stabilizing, so you're getting a little bit of like shoulder strength from one arm kind of gripping something to keep your body in a nice position, and then the other arm kind of pulling back. whole body movement, but with the primary pull pattern being a single arm horizontal pull. Bent over single arm row in a 3-point. Delicious. And finally, again, in no particular order, deficit lunges. The flipping painstaking nature of me deciding whether or not I was going to do this or Bulgarian split squats, I'm still not decided, really. I think it is this basically because you can lift a little bit more weight. I wanted something that is a little bit more full range than a step up and more full range than a sled push, so we really do get a nice stretch at the knee. So like deficited or front foot elevated Bulgarians versus front foot elevated lunges, I was stuck between those, but I think lunges are going to win. Well, they are, that's why they're on the bloody list. But the reason that they kind of pipped the Bulgarians was because you can lift a little bit more weight, and again the pattern of you can get a proper straight leg on that front leg, whereas realistically on a Bulgarian split squat you kind of can't because you stay in a split, and I kind of don't like that. And I think the pattern of as you extend one leg the body is being pulled forwards, I think I just want to train that as much as possible, hence the reason I'd step up and be nice and straight at the top of a step up and even knee drive with the other leg, right? I just like the pattern of, you know, kind of pepper potting those legs forward, because I think if you can kind of get the pelvis and everything strong around there, like you're going to be more athletic. It's not just about training the muscles, it's about training the movements. So that's why it kind of pipped Bulgarians. In terms of why it's front foot elevated, obviously you can't lift as much, but I'm not too bothered about that. We're getting enough strength benefit from everything else we're doing. With this, if this was the 10th and final exercise, and probably like the 4th exercise specifically for lower body, the fact that you get a bit more of a stretch on the front leg, a bit more full range, I like that. I just think that keeps the joints healthy. I think that it allows for a little bit of strength at range as opposed to only really being powerful at the top, and being powerful at the top is important. If you don't have strength at range in addition to that, you're kind of a little bit screwed. I feel as though I've actually kind of fired through those guys. If you would like another video where I list off my 10 favorite exercises for functional bodybuilding, then I will absolutely do that. Again, these are my 10 favorite exercises, the 10 exercises that I would choose if I was only able to do those for the rest of my life, looking at it through the lens of generalized strength and athleticism and being the master generalist that I want to be. Intrigued to hear if you agree or if you disagree. Please put both of those down in the comment section below. If you have not yet done so, make sure you subscribe. If you did enjoy this video, please do smash that like button. And as always guys, stay strong, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I'll see you all in the next video.